Hailey's manager remained silent after Jackson finished explaining his proposal. Shock was still written across her face, but it wasn't the kind that demanded an immediate reaction. It was the quiet kind that forced a person to pause and reassess everything they thought they understood. She had expected defensiveness. Maybe even arrogance. Instead, Jackson had spoken with restraint, choosing his words carefully, never once raising his voice or trying to dominate the conversation. He wasn't selling an idea, he was presenting it, calmly, and leaving space for it to be questioned. From the way he spoke, she understood something important. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't ego. This was intention. Jackson's manager sensed the shift in the room and stepped in gently, careful not to overstep. "We genuinely believe this could be beneficial for Hailey," she said. "Not just for the project, but for her confidence and comfort moving forward." Jackson has worked in similar situations before. He understands the responsibility. Hailey's manager crossed her arms, her guard still very much up. "Understanding responsibility and respecting boundaries aren't the same thing," she replied evenly. "I agree," Jackson said immediately. "And that's why I wanted you here. If this doesn't feel right to you, we stop." Completely. The discussion continued for several minutes. They talked about industry standards, about intimacy coordinators, about the unspoken pressures younger actors face when they don't want to appear difficult. Jackson didn't interrupt. When he spoke, it was only to clarify, never to defend himself. Slowly, the tension in the room shifted. Hailey's manager noticed it in herself first. Her initial anger softened, not into trust, but into consideration. She began to see that Jackson wasn't positioning himself above the situation. He was placing himself inside it, willing to be scrutinized. Then, unexpectedly, Jackson leaned back slightly in his chair, exhaling as if he had reached a decision of his own. "There's something I should say," he said. Both managers looked at him. "This isn't part of the proposal," Jackson continued, his tone steady but quieter now. "And I'm not saying this to influence your decision. But I don't believe in half-truths when the stakes are this high." Hailey's manager felt her spine straighten. Jackson met her gaze directly. "I like Hailey. Genuinely." The words landed without drama. No dramatic pause. No softening smile. Just honesty. "She's focused. She listens. She shows up prepared. And she doesn't hide behind confidence she doesn't feel yet." He paused briefly. "That matters to me." Jackson's manager looked startled but didn't interrupt. This wasn't something they had rehearsed. Hailey's manager felt a sharp mix of reactions, concern, protectiveness, and something closer to reluctant respect. "And that's exactly why I wanted to say it out loud," Jackson added. "Because liking someone doesn't give me any right to make them uncomfortable. If anything, it increases my responsibility to make sure I don't." The room fell quiet again. Hailey's manager studied him carefully, searching for cracks in his composure. What she saw instead was control, not coldness, but discipline. He wasn't asking for permission. He wasn't asking for access. He was acknowledging a truth and placing it on the table, knowing full well it could cost him. "You realize," she said slowly, "that this makes things more complicated." "I know," Jackson replied. "But pretending it doesn't exist would be worse." She looked down briefly, gathering her thoughts. Her priority had never changed. It was still Hailey. Always Hailey. "This doesn't change my position," she said firmly. "Hailey's comfort comes first. If she says no, this conversation ends here." "As it should," Jackson said without hesitation. The meeting didn't end with agreement. It ended with understanding. And sometimes, that was far more dangerous. The meeting ended without raised voices or dramatic exits, but Hailey's manager walked out with a weight pressing firmly against her chest. Jackson's words replayed in her mind, not because they were persuasive, but because they had been uncomfortably sincere. She didn't head back to the office right away. Instead, she lingered in the quiet hallway outside the cafe, watching the door close behind Jackson and his manager. Only when they disappeared from view did she allow herself to exhale. A moment later, Jackson's manager stepped beside her. "Coffee?" she asked gently. They had known each other long enough to skip formalities. Their careers had crossed too many times, shared too many late-night calls and crisis meetings for politeness to matter anymore. They sat at a small table near the window, steam curling up from untouched cups. Hailey's manager spoke first. "I'm not sure about him," she said, blunt and unfiltered now that the room was safe. "You know his reputation." "I do. The industry does." Jackson's manager didn't flinch. She nodded slowly. "I know. He hasn't exactly hidden it." "That's exactly my concern," Hailey's manager continued. "Jackson has always been charming. Too charming. He moves fast. People get caught up in it, and then they're left dealing with the consequences." Jackson's manager folded her hands together, listening carefully. This wasn't an argument, it was a confession of fear. "You think he's a playboy," Hailey's manager said, finally putting the word out loud. "And I can't afford to gamble Hailey's emotional safety on the chance that he's suddenly different." For a moment, Jackson's manager remained silent. Then she sighed, a tired sound that carried years of experience. "You're not wrong," she said. "That's the truth people know. But it's not the whole truth." Hailey's manager looked at her sharply. "I've worked with Jackson for over a decade," Jackson's manager continued. "I've seen every version of him, the careless one, the reckless one, the one who thought talent could excuse everything. This is different." She leaned forward slightly. "He's not trying to impress. He's trying to get it right. That alone should tell you something." "People can act serious when it suits them," Hailey's manager replied. "Yes," Jackson's manager agreed. "But not like this. Not with this much restraint. He asked me to stay quiet. He asked for boundaries before anyone demanded them. And he put himself in a position where he could be rejected." She paused, letting the words settle. "I trust him," she said finally. "And I don't say that lightly." Hailey's manager stared into her coffee, watching the surface ripple slightly. She thought of Hailey, her nervous laughter, her careful professionalism, the way she always tried to appear stronger than she felt. Helping Hailey meant shielding her. But it also meant preparing her. And sometimes, preparation required stepping into uncomfortable territory, with the right safeguards. "What if he hurts her?" Hailey's manager asked quietly. Jackson's manager didn't answer immediately. "Then I'll hold him accountable," she said. "And so will you. But if this works, if he truly shows up the way he claims he will, it could change how Hailey navigates this industry." Silence stretched between them. Hailey's manager closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her expression had shifted, not softer, but resolved. "All right," she said. "I'll help. Not for him. For Hailey." Jackson's manager nodded once, understanding the weight of that decision. "This stays controlled," Hailey's manager added. "And if I sense even the slightest risk, this ends." "Agreed," Jackson's manager said firmly. They stood up together, an unspoken pact settling between them. Hailey still knew nothing. But a decision had been made, one that could shape her future in ways none of them could fully predict. Hailey was sitting in the small meeting room when her manager walked in. The table between them was cluttered with papers, schedules, and a copy of the script Hailey had barely touched since the night she discovered the intimate scenes. She looked up, trying to smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Her manager noticed immediately. "You're still thinking about it," she said gently, taking a seat across from her. Hailey nodded. "I can't stop," she admitted. "Every time I try to focus on the next shoot, my mind goes straight to those scenes. I don't even know where to begin." She twisted her fingers together, a habit she had when she felt overwhelmed. "I don't want to mess this up." And I don't want to look unprofessional by being scared. Her manager listened quietly, her expression calm, almost reassuring. Inside, however, she weighed every word she was about to say. The decision she had made earlier now stood right in front of her, and there was no room for mistakes. There is a way, she said carefully, choosing her tone with intention. A way to get comfortable, and to do those scenes properly. Cleanly. Without dragging the anxiety out. Hailey's head snapped up. There is? For the first time in days, hope flickered across her face. What way? She asked quickly. Her manager leaned back slightly, as if recalling past experiences. I've worked with many new actresses, she said. Talented ones. Nervous ones. Some who felt exactly the way you do now. Hailey listened closely. And a few of them, her manager continued, handled scenes like this by preparing in advance. Quietly. Professionally. With the right person. No audience. No pressure. Hailey's breath caught. What do you mean? Her manager met her eyes. They spoke honestly to their co-actor. They admitted they were afraid. And they asked for help, not to perform, but to understand the scene. The movement. The pacing. The emotional beats. Hailey sat very still. This kind of preparation isn't talked about openly, her manager added. Because people misunderstand it. But when done correctly, it allows the actual shoot to happen smoothly. Sometimes even in one take. Hailey swallowed. And, you think that would work for me? I think it could, her manager said. If you're comfortable. And only if you are. She paused, then continued, as calmly as she could. You could talk to Jackson. Tell him you're afraid. Tell him you need guidance. Ask him to help you prepare so that when the time comes, you won't freeze or panic. For a second, Hailey didn't react. Then her eyes widened. Jackson, she repeated. Her manager nodded, keeping her voice steady. He's experienced. He understands the craft. And from what I've observed, he respects professionalism. Hailey stood up abruptly, shock rippling through her. You want me to go to him? And say all that? Her heart raced. The idea alone felt overwhelming. I'm not forcing you, her manager said quickly. This is just a suggestion. One option. Hailey shook her head slowly, trying to process it. I didn't expect this. I thought you'd suggest changing the scene, or delaying it, or something else. Her manager watched her closely. Those options aren't always available, she said gently. But support can be. Hailey hugged the script to her chest, conflicted emotions swirling inside her, fear, disbelief, confusion. She hadn't expected this. Not at all. 4 days had passed. Hailey knew because she had counted them, each one slipping by with the same unresolved weight pressing against her chest. For mornings of waking up with the script beside her bed. For nights of rereading the same pages without turning them. For days of telling herself she should be ready by now. But she wasn't. The scenes loomed in her thoughts, not because of what they required physically, but because of what they demanded emotionally. Vulnerability. Control. Trust. Things she hadn't yet learned how to separate from fear. She sat alone in her apartment, the room quiet except for the soft hum of the city outside. The script rested open on her lap now, her fingers tracing the margins absently. She had gone over every possible alternative in her mind, asking for changes, requesting delays, pretending confidence until the moment arrived. None of them felt honest. Her manager's words replayed again, gently but persistently. Ask for help. Be honest. Prepare properly. Still, doubt crept in. Would someone like Jackson really help her? He was a senior actor. Respected. Experienced. Someone who had nothing to gain from slowing down for a newcomer like her. She imagined the conversation a dozen times, each version ending with polite dismissal or awkward silence. why would he take the time? She thought. Yet another voice answered quietly, what if he does? By the fourth evening, the hesitation began to feel heavier than the fear itself. Avoidance was no longer protecting her, it was exhausting her. She closed the script slowly. Decision settled not as confidence, but as resolve. The next morning, Hailey dressed simply. No overthinking. No rehearsed speeches. She picked up the script and held it tightly, as if it were grounding her. This wasn't about courage, it was about responsibility. To herself. To her role. The studio buzzed as usual, but she barely noticed. Her steps were steady as she walked past familiar corridors, past crew members who greeted her casually, unaware of the quiet storm unfolding inside her. Jackson's trailer stood at the far end of the lot. She stopped a few feet away. Her heart pounded. You can turn back, her mind whispered. She didn't. Hailey took a breath, lifted her hand, and knocked. A moment passed. Then the door opened. Jackson stood there, mid-motion, clearly not expecting anyone. Surprise crossed his face instantly, followed by something he quickly masked. His eyes flicked briefly to the script in her hands, then back to her face. Hailey, he said, genuinely caught off guard. She swallowed. Hi. Sorry to interrupt. He stepped back instinctively, opening the door wider. No, it's okay. Come in. As she crossed the threshold, Jackson closed the door behind her, his composure returning, but not entirely. There was a subtle shift in his expression, something restrained but unmistakable. He hadn't expected her. And though he kept his tone neutral, his posture relaxed just a little, as if something unspoken had finally begun. Hailey stood there, script pressed to her chest, unsure how to begin, but knowing she had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. And Jackson, despite himself, felt a quiet, private flicker of relief. Not because she was there, but because she had chosen to speak. For a moment after stepping inside the trailer, neither of them spoke. Hailey stood near the door, the script clutched tightly in her hands. Her heart was racing now, not because she had come, but because she was finally about to say the words she had rehearsed silently for days. Jackson waited. He didn't rush her. He leaned casually against the counter, giving her space, his posture open but neutral. Slowly, Hailey inhaled. Before I say anything, she began, her voice quiet but steady, please don't be shocked. And, you can say no at any point. I'll understand. Completely. Jackson straightened slightly, surprised by the seriousness in her tone. Okay, he said gently. She looked down at the script, then back up at him. I've been struggling with the upcoming scenes, she continued. Not because I don't want to do my job. I do. But because I don't know how to prepare properly. Her fingers tightened around the pages. So I wanted to ask, would you be able to help me practice them? Just to understand the movement, the pacing. Nothing more. The words hung in the air. Jackson blinked once, genuinely caught off guard. He hadn't expected this, not from her, and not so directly. For a brief second, shock crossed his face. Then he masked it. What he didn't show, what he wouldn't show, was the quiet relief, the warmth that settled somewhere deep inside him. He kept his expression professional, thoughtful. He didn't answer immediately. Minutes passed. Hailey waited, every second stretching longer than the last. She was already preparing herself for refusal. Finally, Jackson spoke. Yes, he said calmly. I can help. Hailey's shoulders relaxed before she could stop them from doing so. But, he added carefully, not here. There are too many people around. Too many interruptions. This kind of preparation needs privacy, not secrecy, just focus. She looked at him, unsure. I suggest, he continued, that you come to my place tomorrow. We'll keep it professional. Script-based. If at any point you're uncomfortable, we stop. Hailey's eyes widened. The suggestion startled her, even though it made sense. She hesitated. Then nodded. Okay. The word felt heavy, but necessary. The next day came faster than she expected. Hailey stood outside Jackson's house, nerves buzzing through her entire body. She had chosen her outfit carefully, not dramatic, not casual. Still, when she looked down at her reflection in the glass door, she wondered if she'd overthought it. She lifted her hand and knocked. Jackson opened the door, and froze. For a fraction of a second, he simply stared. Hailey looked different outside the studio lights. Softer. More real. He quickly composed himself, stepping aside to let her in. "You're right on time," he said evenly. Inside, Hailey felt her nerves spike again. The space was quiet, orderly. Too quiet. They sat on the couch, leaving a respectful distance between them at first. Hailey placed the script on her lap, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm really nervous," she admitted softly. Jackson noticed immediately. Without making it a moment, without drawing attention to it, he shifted, just slightly, and sat next to her. Not close enough to overwhelm. Just close enough to ground. "We'll go slow," he said. "Nothing happens unless you're ready." Hailey nodded, gripping the script a little less tightly now. The practice hadn't begun yet. But something important already had. Hailey sat on the edge of the couch, script in hand, her fingers gripping it as if it were a lifeline. The room was quiet, filled only with the faint hum of the city outside and the soft rustle of pages as she turned them. Jackson sat across from her, keeping a careful distance. His posture was relaxed, professional, but attentive. He didn't lean forward, didn't press her for reaction, he simply waited, letting her set the pace. Hailey's eyes scanned the lines, lingering over the words describing the next scene. Her heart thumped loudly in her chest as she read the stage directions. The script outlined the character moving closer to the other actor, the subtle gestures of touch and intimacy, the soft gestures leading to the moment of a forehead kiss and finally a lip kiss. Her cheeks warmed immediately. She felt her fingers tighten around the pages, her breathing growing a little quicker. The words weren't just instructions, they carried a weight she wasn't used to confronting so directly. She murmured, her voice barely audible. She looked up at Jackson, her eyes wide. This is in the script?" Jackson nodded slightly, keeping his expression neutral. "Yes. That's how it's written." Hailey swallowed hard. Her mind raced. "How am I supposed to do this? Will I ever be ready?" She glanced down at the page again, tracing the words with her finger, imagining the characters, trying to detach herself from the embarrassment that clawed at her chest. Jackson watched quietly. There was no judgment in his eyes, no smirk, no teasing. Just patience and professionalism. Yet, inside, a flicker of satisfaction crossed him, a silent acknowledgement that she had trusted him enough to sit and read this aloud. Hailey's voice broke slightly as she continued. The way it's written, it feels so close. I mean, the gestures and the kiss," her words faltered, her shyness apparent. She glanced away, hiding her flushed cheeks behind the script. Jackson leaned back slightly, careful not to invade her space. "It's okay," he said softly. "We're just reading. Nothing more. No pressure, no expectation." She exhaled slowly, trying to calm her racing heart. I didn't expect it to be so descriptive." He gave a small, understanding nod. "It's meant to guide actors, to show the emotional beats, the progression of the scene. But right now, you're just reading. That's all." Hailey peeked over the script again. The words on the page still made her nervous. She felt shy, almost vulnerable, as if Jackson could see every pulse and hesitation. And maybe he did, but his presence was steady, reassuring. Minutes passed, filled only with the sound of pages turning, punctuated by Hailey's occasional soft murmur of surprise or discomfort. Jackson listened, never interrupting, offering small, calm acknowledgments when she needed reassurance. By the time they finished reading the intimate scene, Hailey's breathing had slowed slightly, though her face remained flushed. She felt a strange mix of embarrassment, relief, and, unexpectedly, a bit of pride. She had read the words aloud. She had confronted the scene directly. Jackson glanced at her briefly, his expression neutral, but the faintest hint of approval lingered in his eyes. "You did well," he said quietly. "Just reading it is the first step. You're handling it exactly as you should, carefully, thoughtfully, professionally." Hailey nodded, still holding the script tightly. Her shyness lingered, but she felt a tiny shift inside her. The fear of the unknown had lessened, just slightly. And she realized, quietly, that having someone she trusted there made the experience bearable. They closed the script, letting the moment settle, the room quiet again, each of them lost in thought, Hailey processing, Jackson observing, both aware of the scene, but respecting the boundary of reading it only.